Initiation into Hermetics by Franz Barden. And where did we get to? Magic, physical training, 7. If the magician is capable to manage the projection of elements to the outside, so that he knows how to project any element he likes to out of himself or directly from the universe, he will be able as well to create elementaries for his own and other people's profit too. He will succeed in creating beings which will be his faithful servants, not only on the mental level but on the astral and material one likewise, according to his producing, or rather condensing these beings in a mental, astral or material way. I have been talking already about the deliberate or conscious creation of thought forms or elementals. The difference between an elemental and an elementary is in that an elemental is produced on the base of a deliberate form of thoughts, with the help of the magician's imagination and willpower, and works mainly on the mental plane for the magician's or other people's benefit. An elementary, on the other hand, is far more penetrating and subtle in its effect, because it is being created from one or several elements. In the light of practical examples, I will explain the real procreation act of an elementary as thoroughly as possible, demonstrating the manner in which the magician has to create an elementary. The intuition acquired by the previous training will certainly help the magician to contrive his own practice, responsive to the purpose he aims at. According to his ethical development, he will never dare to create elementaries for evil purposes. The invisible world would certainly vow ferocious revenge on him, because through the knowledge of how to create elementaries, the magician has got a plenitude of powers which allows him to achieve anything on the mental, astral, and material level he likes to. He must always consider that it's he himself who is responsible for his deeds, and not the elementary he has created. The elementaries are compliant tools in the hands of the magician, following his orders blindly and granting every desire to him, regardless whether a bad thing has to be turned to good account or the other way round. In the same manner as you cannot expect a baker's job done by a joiner, you cannot demand of an elementary created for a certain purpose the accomplishment of a second task it was not meant for. For this particular reason, you must never give 2 or more orders to any of the elementaries, for in this case the elementary will do neither one nor the other job well and reliably. Apart from that, there is also the analogy to the elements to be considered. It would be quite wrong and against the law if a magician created an elementary which would not be in harmony with the analogous elements. As to the shape of the elementary, there are no limits to the magician's fantasy, and it is entirely left to him to choose the form according to his liking and his intuition. Avoid, however, to pick out the shape of living or deceased people you have known, or who you have been or are still in connection with, or who you have been. By doing so, you might easily slip into the reach of the mental or astral body of the respective human being, and consequently do him great damage. Apart from that, there is a danger that an elementary might turn against the magician in consequence of its inbred intelligence at any unguarded moment. It would understand perfectly to vampirize him or to influence on him indirectly when asleep, and to do any possible amount of mischief. Every magician is advised, therefore, to take this warning very seriously. Each elementary has to be given a name at the very moment of its creation. It is opportune to choose less common names because the mere utterance of a name will be enough to bring the elementary near the magician at once. Supposing one has created several elementaries, it is advisable to take notes of the names in order not to forget them. But these names must not be mentioned to anyone else, because another magician, being clever enough, could easily seize the elementaries and work with them without any effort. The power and effectiveness of an elementary entirely depend on its loading. The stronger the magician's willpower is, all the greater will be the projection of the elements to the outside, and an elementary loaded to such an extent becomes, of course, all the more pervasive and far more efficacious. Sometimes an elementary can be so much condensed that it is visible even to an untrained physical eye. It is, therefore, up to the magician himself whether he wants the elementary to work visibly or invisibly, just as the case may be. The duration of life of an elementary depends on the purpose to which it has been created, and this purpose has to be fixed right at the beginning of the creation act. As soon as the purpose is fulfilled, the magician must dissolve his elementary in its original element, with the help of the imagination. Never omit this process of dissolution, because an elementary, having performed its task, becomes easily independent as the outcome of its instinct of self-preservation. And if you forget to do so, it likes to escape from your sphere of influence and become a vampire. In this case, the magician would have to face all the karma results caused by such an elementary transmuted into a vampire. Therefore, carefulness and conscientiousness are seriously recommended when you are handling elementaries. Many magicians determine right at the creation act the kind of disintegration of the elementary by destroying the name of the elementary in question, burning it, performing a certain rite, a sign or a gesture, or using a formula which they fixed in advance. All this is individual and left to the magician's choice. A special attention has to be paid to the act of disintegration. Provided the magician be equal to this task, he will be able to force his elementaries to absolute obedience at any time by threatening them with disintegration. At all events, he should imprint on his mind that he is capable to bring the elementaries under his will and to have complete command of them. This is very important if the magician does not wish to be the plaything of his self-created beings. He will make the experience the better, the more faithfully and the more reliably an elementary is serving him, the more engaging it will become, and he will hate to dissolve it at all. But never must the magician give way to his sentimentalism, because he would get into the thraldom of elementaries. For this reason, it is more opportune to destine elementaries for a short life only, creating new ones for the same purpose in case of need. This does not mean, of course, that a new elementary should be created every week for the same purpose, but it is a disadvantage to keep the same elementary for years for one affair only. Should the magician intend to create elementaries for his own use, he had better form them by the projection of elements through his body. Elementaries, however, destined for other people, should be created by the projection of elements directly from the universe. The magician knows very well that there is an invisible connection between him and every elementary, which could be misused very easily. If he started to create elementaries by physical projection for other human beings as well. The way of how to manage it will be quite understandable to every magician without any doubt. It is necessary to talk about the places where elementaries should be deposited. In the Orient, elementaries, called their yidams, are banished into a clichor, where they are preserved. A clichor is a diagram built from stone and corresponding to the yidam, to which no stranger will ever be admitted. The well-trained magician, however, needs no separate place for it, but he will hide the elementary in a spot in the wall, realizing that an elementary is neither limited to time nor does it claim a special space. Hence, it will be quite all right in the wall as well as if it would have been accommodated in an open space. It is even more suitable to keep it in a wall or any solid big object, because it is better to avoid banning it to places where other people are about all the time. Should a human being happen to come to the same place where an elementary is kept, the person would suddenly feel restless, and other bad consequences might occur. Furthermore, it has to be fixed right at the beginning of the creation act how the elementary ought to be called up. This can be done by whispering the name or thinking it only, or simply by a movement of the hand, a gesture, or a ritual. The magician is at liberty to do as he pleases. Before I am going to particularize the practical part, the proper act of creation, I should like to remark that it is not necessary for the magician to restrict himself to this practice, this being only a small part of practical magic and a hint how the magician is to use his power. He should not specialize thereon. On the contrary, if he is capable to manage these practices perfectly, further possibilities are still at his disposal. This part of magic is to be followed up in the beginning only, and it is up to the magician to utilize it to help himself or other people too. And last not least, this is the purpose of this theme.